I started dating a nurse just days after my girlfriend told her friends at dinner. He can't even satisfy me, let alone provide for me, while I sat there in shock as they all laughed and looked down on me. I am 27 years old. I started my electrical company when I was 23, right after finishing a 4-year apprenticeship. My father was a master electrician and union member for 32 years before he retired. He taught me everything about the trade, from basic residential wiring to complex industrial systems, and most importantly, the business side. I started small, just me, my truck, and a handful of tools doing basic house jobs, rewiring old houses, installing ceiling fans, basic panel upgrades. I was smart. I saved every penny. I reinvested in better equipment, and I focused on building a reputation for quality work and fair prices. For years later, I already have 9 employees, 3 fully equipped trucks, and a small warehouse for materials. We do everything from residential services to large commercial projects. Last year, my company generated between $1.2 and $2 million, and after taxes and expenses, I was left with $240,000. Not bad for a dumb electrician, right? I have a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house in Maple Hill, one of the nicest neighborhoods in the city. I bought it 2 years ago for $380,000. I put down $150,000, so my mortgage is only $1,650 a month. It has a 2-car garage where I keep my weekend car, a 2019 Camaro SS that I bought in cash. For work, I drive a fully equipped F-250 with every tool and piece of equipment I might need. I have about $180,000 in savings and investments, in addition to my company's assets. I am not rich, but I am doing very well for someone who never went to college. My parents are proud. My friends respect what I have built, and I honestly love what I do. There is something very satisfying about solving electrical problems and making things work well. The point is, I am not just a handyman. I am a licensed master electrician with my own successful business. I provide employment, pay taxes, contribute to the community, but apparently none of that mattered to my ex-girlfriend Jessica. I met Jessica at a friend's barbecue about 11 months ago. She was 26 years old, pretty, and at first seemed down to earth. She worked as a digital marketing coordinator at a small downtown agency called Creative Solutions. She basically made social media posts and managed advertising campaigns for small businesses. She earned $47,000 a year and was proud of her professional work. At first, everything was going very well. She was impressed that I had my own business and my own house. We went out to dinner, went to the movies, the usual. Sometimes she would visit me on the job sites and seemed genuinely interested in what I was doing. I remember one time she saw me solve a complicated problem with a 3-phase motor and said it was like watching a detective solve a mystery. After about 6 months, she started staying at my house almost every night, and after 8 months she moved in officially. I did not charge her rent or anything. The house was paid off, and I could afford the utilities. She would contribute with groceries sometimes and help with the cleaning. It seemed like a normal, healthy relationship, but looking back, there were signs I completely ignored. She always made a weird face when people asked her what I did for a living. At parties or gatherings, she would introduce me as Diego has his own business, but without saying it was in electricity. If someone asked for more details, she would say things like, "Oh, he is in construction," or "he takes care of building maintenance." Technically true, but completely omitting that I am the owner of the company. She also started making subtle comments about my work clothes. "Would you not like to dress well for work sometime?" Or, "It must be comfortable not to have to worry about looking professional." I explained to her that I dressed like that because I climbed in attics and worked with my hands, but she never seemed to understand. The girl liked expensive things. In addition, she was always talking about designer handbags she wanted, new restaurants she wanted to try, trips she wanted to take, places completely out of her budget, but she would hint that we should go together. Since I cared about her and could afford it, I used to say yes. I took her to expensive restaurants, bought her a nice necklace for her birthday, paid for a weekend trip to the mountains. I did not care because I wanted to make her happy, but I started to notice that she expected it, as if it were my responsibility to finance her lifestyle, just because I earned more. She never offered to pay for anything, even when we went to places she wanted to go to. The real problem started when Jessica became close with a group of girls from her work. Let me tell you about them, because they are key to understanding what happened next. First, there is Brittany, 28 years old, who works in human resources at a medium-sized insurance company. She earns about $52,000 a year and acts as if she runs the company, always talking about corporate culture and professional development, as if she were a business guru. She is dating Ryan, who works in business development at a software company. From what I understand, that means he spends his day making cold calls to sell things that people do not need. He earns $63,000 plus commissions. Then there is Chloe, 27 years old, who calls herself a marketing specialist at a tech startup. She earns $49,000 a year and never stops talking about growth hacking, brand synergy, and other buzzwords she probably learned from podcasts. She is dating a guy named Carlos, who is an account manager at another startup that created an app no one has ever heard of. He earns $56,000 plus stock that is probably worthless. These women would come to my house, which is mine, by the way, and make subtle comments about everything. "Wow, this modular sofa is interesting," said Brittany about my leather furniture. Very masculine. Chloe would look around and say, "Diego, you should consider hiring an interior designer. It would really elevate the space." Elevate the space? "Miss, you live in a 55 square meter apartment furnished with IKEA, and I should take decorating advice from you." But the worst part was seeing how Jessica changed when she was with them. She started using the corporate jargon she heard from them, talking about synergies, optimizing our lifestyle, and asking me why I was not more growth-oriented. She constantly mentioned her friends' boyfriends, that Ryan had been promoted, that Carlos's startup was growing rapidly, that they were both climbing the corporate ladder. These girls would sit in my kitchen eating the food I bought, drinking the coffee I paid for, and talk about their boyfriends' career paths as if they were CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, when in reality they were middle managers with average salaries. And Jessica would nod, agreeing with everything they said. "You know, Jessica," said Brittany one day, "you should encourage Diego to consider a transition into project management or business consulting. With his experience, he could probably get into corporate facilities management, much more professional than what he does now." Project management, business consulting? I was already running a company with 9 employees and multiple 6-figure contracts, but because I wore work boots instead of dress shoes, that was not professional enough. About 3 months ago, Jessica started to be more direct with her dissatisfaction with my career. She would make comments like, "Would you not like to do something more ambitious?" Or, "Ryan is making great progress with his career. Would you not like that kind of growth?" I tried to explain to her that I was already successful, that my business was growing, that I earned good money and was my own boss, but she would just shake her head, as if I did not understand. "It is not about the money, Diego," she would say. "It is about prestige. It is about having a respectable career that people admire." Respectable? I provide an essential service that people desperately need. When their power goes out or their electrical system fails, they call me. I solve problems, I keep businesses running, I make sure people's homes are safe, but apparently that is not respectable because I do not spend my day sitting in an office. She started to hint that I should change careers. Maybe you could be an electrical inspector, that is more of an office job, or maybe teach at a technical school or work in electrical sales. Anything to get me out of the field and into a job she could brag about. The breaking point came when she suggested that I sell my business and work for someone else. "You could probably get a job as a maintenance supervisor at a large company," she said. "It is much more stable than having your own business. Plus, you would have benefits and paid vacation." I looked at her as if she had gone crazy. "Jessica, I earn 4 times as much as a maintenance supervisor. Why would I leave my company to become someone else's employee?" "Because it is a real job, Diego, a professional job, something I could be proud of." That is when I realized that she was not just ashamed of my job, she was ashamed of me. All this time she had been waiting for me to become someone else, someone who fit her idea of what a successful man should be. 2 months ago, Jessica announced that we were going to dinner at Romano's, a fancy Italian restaurant downtown. One of those places where they do not put prices on the menu and a basic pasta dish costs $35. I was not excited, but I thought we could have a nice night. Then she dropped the bombshell. "Oh, and I invited Brittany and Chloe with their boyfriends. You are finally going to get to know Ryan and Carlos well. I have told them so much about you." My stomach dropped. This felt like a trap, but I could not figure out what she was planning. "Jessica, why did you not ask me before? I would have preferred it to be just us." "Because this is important to me, Diego. They are my friends, and I want them to get to know you better. Besides, I thought you would like to meet other successful guys in similar situations." Similar situations? What was that supposed to mean? The day of the dinner, Jessica spent 3 hours getting ready. She kept saying how important that night was, and that she wanted everything to go perfectly. "I really want you to make a good impression," she repeated several times. "These people are important to my career." They were her colleagues from a small marketing agency, not the board of directors of Google. She also spent the whole day mentioning Ryan and Carlos, that Ryan had closed a huge deal with a major client, and that Carlos' startup had just secured another round of investment. I started to suspect that something strange was going on, but I did not know exactly what. We arrived at Romano's at 7 in the evening, and Jessica was more nervous than I had ever seen her. She kept looking at her phone and fixing her hair. When Brittany and Chloe arrived with their boyfriends, Jessica's attitude changed completely. She became a fake, exaggerated version of herself. Ryan was exactly what I imagined. Average height, thinning hair, a cheap suit that did not fit him well, and too much cologne. He had an arrogant smile and kept looking at his phone as if he were someone important. Carlos was worse. Thick hipster glasses, perfect hair, talking loudly about disrupting the industry and innovative solutions. The girls were dressed as if they were going to a red carpet instead of to dinner at a mid-range restaurant. They spent the first 10 minutes taking selfies and talking about how amazing the place was. Jessica was there with them, acting as if she had never been to a fancy restaurant before. I should have left at that moment. All my instincts told me it was a trap. We sat down, and immediately Ryan and Carlos began their speech about how successful they were. Ryan started bragging about his extensive client portfolio and his history of exceeding quarterly goals. Carlos kept talking about his startup's revolutionary platform and how they were ready for explosive growth. They used all the buzzwords of the corporate world, interrupting each other to sound more impressive. I was there thinking, these guys are trying too hard. But the girls were swallowing it, especially Jessica. She was nodding as if they were revealing the secrets of the universe. When it was time for introductions, Jessica hesitated for a second before saying, "This is my boyfriend, Diego. He works in electricity." She did not say, "He has an electrical company," or "He runs a successful business." Just, "He works in electricity," as if he were an apprentice who changes light bulbs. Ryan and Carlos immediately put on a condescending expression. "Oh, great, buddy," said Ryan, with false enthusiasm. "Residential stuff like fixing outlets and that." Before I could answer, Jessica intervened. "He mostly does commercial jobs, building maintenance, that kind of thing." Again, technically true, but completely omitting that I am the owner of the company. Carlos nodded with an air of, I know everything. Sure. It is an important job, buddy. Someone has to keep the lights on, right? The way he said it was as condescending as if he were talking to a child. Throughout the dinner, these guys dominated the conversation, explaining basic business concepts to me as if I had never heard of profit margins or customer service. Ryan kept talking about B2B sales strategies, and Carlos gave lessons on market positioning and competitive analysis. I was there thinking, friends, I run a company with over $1 million in annual revenue. I understand business strategy, but every time I tried to contribute to the conversation, they would interrupt me or change the subject. Meanwhile, Jessica was hanging on every word they said, asking them questions about their work, praising their ideas, and acting as if they were the most fascinating people she had ever met. It was as if I were not even there. Halfway through dinner, Carlos started bragging about the vacation he was planning with Chloe. We are thinking of going to Cabo for our anniversary. We found an amazing all-inclusive resort right on the beach. It is going to be epic. Chloe was practically glowing. Carlos is so good at planning romantic getaways. He always knows exactly what I want. Jessica put on a dreamy look. That sounds amazing. Diego and I never do anything like that. I was confused because we had literally talked about going to Las Vegas next month for a long weekend. And what about Las Vegas? I asked. Las Vegas. That is not romantic, Diego, she said with disdain. That is just partying and gambling. Carlos is talking about a real vacation. And what made it a real vacation? The price. Then Brittany intervened. Ryan surprised me last month with a weekend in Napa Valley. Wine tasting, couples massage, 5-star dinner. It was absolutely magical. She looked at me directly and said, it is so nice to be with someone who knows how to treat a woman like a queen. The comment hung in the air like a challenge. Jessica nodded enthusiastically. See, that is what I am talking about. Some men just have that romantic gene. I felt like I was being ganged up on. These women were systematically attacking my relationship, while their boyfriends smiled arrogantly, and Jessica helped them. Diego is more of the practical type, continued Jessica. He is not much for romantic gestures. Practical? I had taken her on many nice trips and bought her thoughtful gifts, but apparently none of that counted because it was not expensive or flashy enough. Carlos leaned back in his chair. You know what, Diego? You should consider stepping up your game, buddy. Women appreciate the effort. They want to feel special. The condescension in his voice made my blood boil. This guy was giving me lessons on relationships while his girlfriend felt as if he were Casanova. It was then that Jessica completely lost her mind. She started making comments about ambition and motivation, while looking significantly at Ryan and Carlos. She talked about how important it was to be with someone who was moving up in life and had real goals. The thing is, said Jessica, looking at me directly, I need to be with someone who challenges me to grow, someone who is always pushing themselves to achieve more. I tried to stay calm. Jessica, I am achieving more. My business is growing every year. I am learning new skills and taking on bigger projects. That is not what I mean, Diego. I mean real growth, professional growth, career advancement. I advance my career every time I complete a successful project and get a new client. Ryan laughed. Buddy, that is not career advancement. That is just doing your job. Advancement is climbing the corporate ladder, getting promotions, increasing your salary. I do not have a salary because I am the owner of the business. I have revenue and profits. Carlos shook his head as if I did not understand the point. But where is the growth potential? Where is the path to senior management? You are always going to be what you are now. A successful entrepreneur, a manual laborer. He said, manual laborer, with a slight grimace. There is nothing wrong with it, but it is not exactly a career with upward mobility. Jessica was nodding in agreement with everything they said. That is exactly what I have been trying to explain to Diego. He is comfortable staying where he is, but I need someone who shares my ambition. Your ambition? You make social media posts for a living, and your biggest professional achievement was getting a 2,000 raise last year. But I kept that thought to myself. The truth is, continued Jessica, I need to be honest about where I see myself in 5 years. I want to be with someone who can match my professional growth, someone who understands what it means to have a real career. It was then that she looked me straight in the eye and delivered the final blow. Diego, you are a good guy, but let us be realistic. You cannot even satisfy me, much less support me. You are basically a maintenance man who is never going to understand what it is to have real ambition. You are content being a blue-collar worker your whole life, and I am just not. The table fell completely silent. Even Ryan and Carlos seemed uncomfortable. Brittany and Chloe looked at Jessica as if she had just set the table on fire. A maintenance man. This woman who lived in my house, ate the food I paid for, and benefited from my working-class income, had just called me a maintenance man in front of strangers. I sat for a moment processing what had just happened. Then I started to smile. You know what, Jessica? You are absolutely right. I stood up calmly and took out my wallet. Since I apparently cannot support you, I might as well stop trying. I calculated my share of the bill. My steak and 2 sodas came to about $45 with tip. I left exactly $45 on the table. This covers my meal, I announced to everyone. Good luck figuring out the rest. Diego, what are you doing? Asked Jessica with a panicked tone in her voice. I am leaving. You just said in front of everyone here that I cannot support you, so I am going to stop trying. Enjoy your dinner with people who do meet your professional standards. I walked out of that restaurant feeling like I had dodged a bullet. A maintenance man, I repeated calmly. Well, what would you call it? Said Jessica defensively. You do not work in an office. You do not wear professional clothes. You work with your hands. It is manual labor. You are right, I told her. I work with my hands. I solve complex electrical problems, I manage large commercial projects, and I run a business. Very practical work. Yes. Ryan smiled again with superiority. Look, there is nothing wrong with manual labor. Someone has to do it. But let us be realistic about what it is. You are absolutely right, Ryan. Let us be realistic. I turned to him directly. Ryan, how much do you earn a year, if you do not mind me asking? Diego, do not. Jessica intervened, but I ignored her. I earned 63,000 base plus commissions, said Ryan proudly. I had a great year last year. Excellent. And you, Carlos? Carlos straightened up. I earned 56,000 plus company stock, but the stock is where the real value is. Sure, very impressive. Both of you. I looked around the table. Jessica, since you are ashamed to be seen with a maintenance man, do you want to know how much this blue-collar worker earned last year? Diego, stop it right now. 240,000. You could have heard a pin drop. The expressions of superiority on Ryan's and Carlos's faces vanished instantly. Brittany's jaw dropped. Chloe looked as if someone had slapped her. That is impossible, Carlos stammered. It is not. Electrical work pays very well. Emergency calls, commercial installations, industrial maintenance contracts. Plus, I'm the owner of the business, so I get all the profits, not just a salary. I took out my phone and showed them a screenshot of my company's banking app. This is last month's revenue, 97,000. After paying employees, materials, and expenses, I took home about 22,000 net. Ryan was looking at the screen as if it were in another language. You earned 22,000 last month. That was actually a slow month. In December, I earned 31,000 from all the holiday emergency calls. The table was completely silent. Jessica looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. So, Jessica, I continued. Are you ashamed to be seen with a maintenance man who earns 4 times as much as your friends' boyfriends combined? Interesting perspective. Jessica's face went through about 6 different shades. Money is not everything, Diego. Funny. It seemed very important when you were talking about Ryan's and Carlos's careers 2 minutes ago. It is not about the money. It is about respect, about having a job that people respect. What is not respectable about providing an essential service that people desperately need? When the power goes out in Ryan's office building, who do you think they call? Another salesman. Carlos tried to regain his composure. Look, we are not saying there is anything wrong with what you do. Actually, that is exactly what you have been saying all night. You have been talking down to me as if I were an uneducated guy who does not understand business, but I am probably the only person at this table who actually built something from scratch. I stood up and took out my wallet. Dinner is on me tonight, since apparently my blue-collar money is worth as much as your professional salaries. I left 200 on the table, enough to cover the entire dinner and the tip. Jessica, when you are ready to apologize for tonight, you know where to find me. But do not take too long. I am a busy man with a very successful maintenance man business to run. As I was leaving, I heard Brittany whisper. He just paid for everyone. Jessica filled my phone with messages in less than an hour, dozens of texts apologizing, saying she did not mean it, begging me to come home so we could talk. She claimed she was just trying to fit in with her friends and got carried away. I did not answer anything. The next morning, she was still sending messages. Diego, please answer me. I know I screwed up, but we can fix it. I love you. Love me? You just called me a maintenance man in front of strangers and acted as if being seen with me was beneath you. That is not love. That is convenience. On Sunday morning, when I woke up, she was gone. She left a note saying she would be staying at Brittany's apartment while I calmed down, as if I were the one who needed to calm down. I spent the day reflecting on our entire relationship, how she had always been a little ashamed of my work, how she introduced me to people, how she pressured me to change careers, how she expected me to finance her lifestyle without contributing anything to it. I realized that I had been dating someone who was ashamed of me, someone who saw me as a project that needed to be fixed instead of a person worthy of love. On Monday morning, I called a locksmith and changed all the locks. Then I called a friend who works in property management and asked him to draft a formal 30-day notice. Since Jessica was not on any rental agreement and did not pay rent, I was completely within my rights to ask her to leave, but I did not want to throw her out by force. I wanted her to understand exactly what she had lost. I got home around 9 at night and sat in the living room thinking about everything that had happened. Jessica had shown her true colors, and honestly, I felt relieved. Better to find out now than after we were more committed. Around 10 at night, I received a message from Sarah, the nurse I had met at the hardware store a few weeks ago. We had been talking and had plans to go out soon. Still want to see that movie tonight? I know it is kind of sudden, but my shift got canceled. Perfect. Come whenever you want. She arrived around 10:30 with takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant. We were getting comfortable to watch the movie when the doorbell rang at 11:15 at night. Are you expecting someone? Asked Sarah. No, not really. I looked through the peephole, and there was Jessica, crying inconsolably with 2 suitcases. I opened the door, and Sarah came up behind me to see what was going on. Diego, thank God you are home. It is me. It is Jessica. I have been thinking about everything, and I know I can fix this. I am so sorry. I did not mean what I said. Please, we need to talk. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw Sarah standing there, in one of my t-shirts, clearly comfortable in my house. Who? Who is she? Jessica stammered. I am Sarah, she said politely, stepping forward. And you are? I am Jessica, his girlfriend. Or we are working things out. Actually, I said calmly. Jessica is my ex-girlfriend. We broke up tonight. Sarah looked between the two of us, understanding immediately. Do you want me to give you some privacy? No need, I replied. Jessica was just leaving. Mr. Thompson, we got your name from the yellow pages. Our computers keep shutting down randomly, and we think it might be an electrical problem. Could you come today? It is urgent. I told them I could make some time around 2 in the afternoon. When I got to the office, I recognized the building immediately. It was one of those converted warehouses into offices downtown, cheaply renovated. Maria received me at the door. Maria was probably in her 50s, well-dressed, and clearly stressed by the situation. Thank you for coming on such short notice. We have been having problems all week, and we cannot afford to continue like this. I started by checking the main electrical panel, and in less than 5 minutes I saw the problem. Whoever did the original electrical work when they converted the building had done a shoddy job. The panel was overloaded, the wiring was not adequate for the load, and several circuits shared neutrals. A serious code violation that could damage equipment or even cause a fire. Ma'am, I found the problem, I told Maria, but it is not a simple repair. Your entire electrical system needs to be updated to current code. It is really dangerous. Her face turned pale. How dangerous? Well, the reason your computers are shutting down is due to voltage fluctuations caused by the overload on the circuits. But the worst part is that you have several fire hazards. This wiring can overheat and catch fire. My God, and how much are we talking about to fix it? I did some quick calculations in my head. This required a complete overhaul. New panel, new circuits, everything according to current code. For a 2,800 square meter office, it was a major project. To do it right, the cost would be between $18,000 and $25,000, depending on what we find when we open the walls. And honestly, for safety reasons, you probably should not continue to operate until it is fixed. Maria looked like she was about to faint. We cannot close. We have clients, deadlines, employees to pay. And that is when Jessica walked in. She saw me there with my tool bag and my multimeter. Her face went through every possible emotion in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, shame, and then panic. Diego, what? What are you doing here? Why are you working here? You know, maintenance man stuff. I replied simply. Maria looked at both of us, clearly confused. Do you know each other? We used to date, said Jessica in a low voice. Oh, wonderful. Maybe he can give us a better price if he knows you personally. I looked at her directly. Actually, this is a pretty complex job. It is a complete renovation of the electrical system, a total update to current codes. Since I am fully booked for the next 2 months, I would have to charge premium rates to fit this project in. What kind of premium rates? Asked Maria. 30,000, and I could not start for another 8 weeks. Jessica's eyes widened. Diego, that is ridiculous. You cannot charge that much. It is actually quite reasonable for an emergency commercial electrical job, I replied professionally. It is a complete system renovation. It requires permits, inspections, coordination with other trades. And since you need it urgently, there is an additional fee for moving the job up. Maria was starting to panic. 8 weeks. We cannot be closed for 8 weeks. We will lose all our clients. I could move them up on the schedule, I said thoughtfully. For 35,000 I could probably start next week, but I would need 50% up front. It was then that Jessica lost control. She took me aside and started whispering to me through clenched teeth. Diego, this is my job. You cannot do this to me. I am sorry about the other night, okay? I did not mean what I said. Which part did you not mean? The part where you called me a maintenance man, or when you said you were ashamed to be seen with me? I was just trying to fit in with my friends. I did not mean it. But you did mean it, Jessica. You have been ashamed of my work from day one. You have always wanted me to change careers, to become someone more respectable. Well, now you can see exactly how respectable my work is. Diego, please, I am begging you, do not do this. Do what? Give your company a fair quote for urgent electrical work? This is business, Jessica. Very professional business. I went back to Maria. Mrs. Santos, I have thought about it, and I could help you in another way. I could refer you to another contractor who might be able to start sooner. Really, that would be great. Of course, I will make some calls. What I did not tell Maria was that the contractor I was going to refer her to was known for being expensive and slow. He would undoubtedly fix the problem, but it would cost them more and take longer than I would. In less than an hour, Brittany and Chloe arrived at the office. Jessica had called them in desperation, and they wanted to talk to me. Apparently, they thought they could convince me to help their friend. Diego, we need to talk, said Brittany with her most professional human resources tone. What happened at dinner was inappropriate. But we are talking about Jessica's livelihood, said Brittany. I agree. What happened at dinner was inappropriate, I replied. Jessica humiliated me publicly and disrespected my profession, but I am not sure what that has to do with her electrical problems. Chloe intervened. Look, we all said things we did not mean, but now you are acting out of revenge. This could cost Jessica her job. I am not acting out of revenge. I am running a business. Your company needs electrical work, and I am a licensed electrical contractor. I gave them a fair quote for an emergency commercial job. 35,000 is not fair. That is extortion, Brittany snapped. It is actually quite reasonable. This morning I consulted with 3 more contractors. The quotes range from 32,000 to 45,000, and they all had longer wait times than I offered. That shut them up immediately. Besides, I continued, I thought you valued professional services. Is that not what you told me at dinner? That professional work deserves professional compensation. Jessica was crying now. Diego, I am sorry. I am so sorry. I know I hurt you, but please do not do this to me. Jessica, I am not doing anything to you. Your building has dangerous electrical problems that need to be fixed. I am offering to fix them at market price. If you cannot afford professional electrical work, maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to date a maintenance man. The contractor I referred them to ended up charging $38,000 and took 10 weeks to complete the job. Creative Solutions had to close for most of that time, operating from a shared space that cost them a fortune in rent. They lost 3 major clients who could not wait for them to be back online. The interruption was catastrophic for their business. Maria ended up firing 2 employees to stay afloat. Jessica was one of them. She called me crying when she was fired. Diego, I lost my job. Are you happy now? I'm not happy or unhappy about it, Jessica. I'm just not surprised. Actions have consequences. This is all your fault. If only you had helped us. If only what? I had given you a discount after you publicly humiliated me. I had prioritized your company over my paying clients. After you said you could not satisfy me or support me. She was silent for a long time. I said I was sorry. Sorry does not erase what you did, Jessica. You showed me exactly what you think of me and my work. You made it clear that you were ashamed to be associated with me. So now you do not have to be. Diego, please. I have nowhere to go. I cannot pay rent without my job. That is no longer my problem. You made your decision in that restaurant. That was 3 months ago. Jessica ended up moving back in with her parents and got a job at Starbucks while she was looking for another professional position. The last I heard, she was still there making lattes and complaining about how unfair her situation was. Brittany and Chloe were left by their boyfriends a month after that dinner. It turns out Ryan had been lying about his sales figures and was fired for falsifying reports. Carlos's startup went under when they failed to secure their next round of funding. Without their successful boyfriends, suddenly the girls did not seem so sure of their relationship standards. In fact, both of them looked for me on social media trying to apologize and asking if I was single. I did not respond. As for me, I am doing better than ever. My business is booming. We are fully booked until the end of the year. I hired 2 more electricians and bought another service truck. I am on track to close the year with $300,000 in profits this year.